Hello and welcome. Thank you so much for joining us for our webinar today. We'll be getting started in about 1 minute at the top. We've just got some intro questions if you'd like to take a minute and fill those out. All right. Thank you all so much. And sorry for the unhappy baby in the background. I'm just going to close that and get us started here in 1 minute. All right, let's get rolling. Thank you so much for joining us today for our Learning Libby with the Experts webinar. This morning, we have so much information we're excited to share with you. We're going to start with the basics, everything you need to know. Then we'll take a brief break before we head into our deep dive session. Now, these are kind of the cherry on top of the Sunday pieces, everything you need to know for your day-to-day life. So we've got a good break lined up in the middle so you can kind of decide if you're going to keep on taking in info or review it with the recording later. But before we dive into the Libby app, we should take a moment to introduce ourselves. My name is Joe, and I am here from Overdrive. I'm part of the digital bookmobile team here, and we have a truck that goes across the US and Canada. I'm here with the other half of the team, Marissa.
Hi there, good morning. My name is Marissa, and like Joe said, I'm his other work half. I always joke with him that he has the boring half of our team's duties. So he hangs back in Cleveland generally and does like all the office work, like the budget and planning our tour route. And then I get the fun part of our job, which is traveling with our digital bookmobile across US and Canada. We have it for the past 3 years, but we hope to get back out on the road next year. And what I do is I go to different libraries and help teach people Libby. So in my 2 years of working at Overdrive, I have helped thousands of people learn how to use Libby, either the basics, which we talk about in our first session, or helping people learn some tips and tricks if they've already started using Libby, which is our second session. So we are really excited to be here today, even if right now it's virtual. Hopefully we'll get back out on the road and see you in person.
Definitely. We're so excited to be here, like Marissa mentioned, even if it is virtually. But yeah, so let's dive in. And as Marissa mentioned, I do have the boring part of the job. I have to take us all through the housekeeping. So first, we have closed captions enabled for this webinar, and you can adjust those in your Zoom meeting controls using the button that says CC. Entire webinar. You can ask those using the button that says Q&A in your Zoom meeting controls. If it makes you more comfortable, you can even ask questions anonymously. If one of us is talking or presenting, the other will be responding. So tap on Q&A, type out your question, and then leave that box open to see our answer as it appears. And Marissa, just a heads up, I just got an internet connection unstable message, just in case I fall off. Now, we are recording our webinar this morning, and we do this for a few different reasons. We love for you to be able to review anything we've covered, and we also love for you to have the option to review anything you'd like to see again if you need to hop off early, if you've got distractions, anything like that. So you'll get an email tomorrow morning from Zoom that includes 2 very important links. for up to the next 30 days, after which it'll expire. And the second link is to our Getting Started PDF that includes links to 30-second video clips of everything we cover in the first half of our webinar. Now, since we are giving you this recording and this helpful Getting Started PDF, we recommend that you watch as we go through these basics and wait to try out the Libby app until we hit that break period, so you don't get lost trying to follow along on the screen. Whenever you leave the webinar, a survey is going to set out for us. Let us know what you thought. And then lastly, we will be connecting iPads into the webinar. Sometimes when we do this, Zoom shrinks the display. If for some reason this happens to you, just follow the steps that we'll be putting in the chat. If you don't see those instructions in the chat, just pop it in the Q&A as a question, and we'll get those answered there for you as well. All right, now I'm going to take a second here to get connected with my iPad. So just give me 1 second, folks.
Your audio is we got the gist of it, but your audio is glitching enough that I think maybe I should go through the download and sign in process. So if you just want to send me the card number in our chat here, I can go ahead and do that, and you don't have to worry about not being understood.
Oh, darn. Sorry, everyone. And yes, I'll send that right now.
All right, so let me get connected here. Sorry about that. Part of working from home is sometimes you have computer issues beyond your control. But luckily, this is why we have 2 people all the time, just in case something goes wrong. The other person can take control here. So just let me get my iPad connected. Perfect. Okay. So the first thing we're going to go over is the downloading process. And Libby is a free app that's available on iOS devices. So think your iPads, your iPhones, and then also Android devices, which there is a long, long list. I could never list every single one of them, but think like Google Pixels or Notes or things like that. So totally free. You can download it in either app store. I'm on an iPad today, so I'm actually going to the Apple App Store. It's this blue icon here that has that white A on it. If you're on an Android device, the icon is going to be a multicolored play button. So it's like a rainbow triangle, and that is the Play Store instead. Once you open up your App Store, you're going to find where you search. And then in your search, you will type in Libby. So Libby. And I honestly skip over all of the search suggestions because when you tap on search on your device's keyboard, that's going to take you directly to the results page, and Libby will show up second. So you can see there's a little maroon app with Libby reading her book, and it says Libby by Overdrive. Now, you'll notice that mine says open, and that's because I do have the app downloaded already on my device. But if you don't have Libby downloaded yet, on an Apple device, it's going to say get. On an Android device, it's going to say install. And you'll tap either get or install, and that is going to start downloading the Libby app. You may be prompted to sign into your app store depending on your device's settings, but Libby is free. So even if you have to sign in, you're not going to be charged. Free to download and then free to borrow books as well. So once we get the Libby app downloaded, we'll go ahead and leave the app store. And then we'll find that freshly downloaded Libby app on our device. So you can see it here, that maroon icon with Libby reading her book. I'll go ahead and tap that to open the app. Now, when you first open the Libby app, she's going to have a few questions for you to get started. So right now she's asking, do we have a library card? I'm going to go ahead and tap on yes. And then we have a couple different ways that we can find our library. Search for a library is really the quickest way to find your library in the Libby app. Here you can type in your library name or your city or zip code. Before I do that, I want to point out this top option as well. It says copy from another device. So one of the great things about Libby is that you can put Libby onto as many devices as you like, and all of your books will sync across those devices. You could, be at the doctor's office on your phone and then go home and switch over to your tablet. And so if you want to put Libby on multiple devices, what you'll do is set up your first device, and then any device thereafter, you can copy from your other device, and it takes so many less steps. It's an 8-digit code instead of typing in your full library number, card number. And so I just wanted to point that out as an option for you as well. But because this is our first device, let's go ahead and search for our library here using our zip code. So in this field, we can type in our name, our city, or our zip. I'm going to go ahead and do zip. That's usually the quickest way. And you see, as soon as I put in the zip code, Jericho Public Library is the first result that pops up. So that is what we're looking for. And all we have to do now that we've found it is tap on that box. And it's going to take us into the library's digital collection. Now, you'll notice that Libby's saying here that we still need to add a library card so that we can begin borrowing titles and placing holds. So what we're going to do is sign in with my card. If you don't have a library card yet, always reach out to your library. They're in charge of assigning cards and things like that. If you forget your PIN or your PIN just isn't working, then you'll want to reach out to your library then as well. They are in charge of your PIN. So I'm trying to talk and type in this long number at the same time. We'll see how well I did. Double check it before I hit next. And now I'm going to type in my PIN. This is usually Joe's part, and he's very good at multitasking, talking and typing in those long numbers at the same time. Now that I've typed in my card number and my PIN, I'm going to tap on sign in. And if I did it correctly, then my library card is going to show up on the screen here. Now, I want to point out right here on the card, you can see it says loans 0 of 10. That means you can borrow 10 items in Libby. And then for holds, it says 0 of 14. So you can place holds on up to 14 items at a time as well. Now I'm going to go ahead and tap on next. And here you can see that I have access to the library's complete collection of ebooks and audiobooks, and we can get started with borrowing and placing holds. Now, I don't want to start borrowing any of your library's books while I'm just going through this demo. So I'm going to switch over to my own personal demo collection that we use for this webinar. So just give me a second here. And again, I just do this so I'm not borrowing any books someone else wants to borrow, snatching up their books. That would be quite a pain. So here is my demo collection. The functionality of my collection is going to be exactly the same. Everything that I'm going to do, you will be able to do in your collection. The difference is the books that are available. So my library might buy different books, and my library also has magazines available and yours doesn't. But the actual functionality of the app is going to remain the exact same. All right. So we are going to get started here. I do have one little caveat before we get started. If you cannot see the navigation bar down at the bottom of my screen, there's 5 icons within that navigation bar. It's search, library, menu, shelf, and timeline. If you cannot see that, then Joe is going to put out instructions in the chat, and that will give you the instructions for how to change the zoom ratio. And it is really important that you see that navigation bar down at my screen. It will help you follow along much easier as we go throughout the getting started demonstration, especially. So I will talk about all of these icons at some point in the demonstration, but we're going to start out with the second icon that you see in the navigation bar. It looks like a little library building, and then it says library underneath. And this is the icon that you're going to tap on when you want to browse your library's entire collection of ebooks and audiobooks. Now, I use the word browse because it's a lot like if you were to walk into the physical library and you just started taking a look around and taking a gander at the shelves and seeing if something sparks interest. You're not looking for something specific. You're just kind of feeling everything out. And if something catches your eye, then you're going to go ahead and borrow it. So remember, at the library, you browse the shelves. Now, at the top of our library page, you'll see there are some filters. These filters are a great place to start when you're browsing. You could tap on just added, and that's going to be a list of titles that are brand new to the collection. The library just bought them and added them to the collection. Available now is a really great place to start if you're someone who reads a lot and you want to make sure that you're finding a book that is available to borrow straight away and you don't have to join a waiting list for. So you can always tap into available now, and that's going to be a list of all titles that are currently available to borrow. The last filter here is subjects. I would say this is one of the most popular ways to browse for books. Most of us are subject or genre readers. We have a subject in mind, usually, whether it's history or historical fiction or thriller. You could tap into subjects and you could choose which subject you'd like to browse by. So also a really excellent place to start. If you are a subject reader or a genre reader, you can always hop into that. Now, in addition to those filters up at the top, when you start scrolling down the page here, you'll come across this section that's labeled guides. Now, guides differ from library to library. So yours aren't necessarily going to look exactly like mine do. Each library gets to choose which ones are displayed in their collection. But as an example of what these are, is the library is pointing you in the direction of certain content based on a specific criteria. So for kids, if we tapped into the kids guide, then we'll see curated collection that are geared towards juveniles. So we'll get to see read-alongs, picture books, juvenile nonfiction, things like that. So a great way, if you have a catalog guide like these, you can hop in there and search or browse rather by those. Now we're going to keep making our way down the page here. And now you're going to start to see general curated collections that the library puts together for you. Now, these are a lot like if you walk into the library in the summer and there is an end cap that's displaying beach reads, and then you go back in the winter and that end cap switches over to cozy mysteries or holiday recipe guides. These curated collections that you see here on this library page, they're going to switch throughout the year. They're going to rotate all the time. And that's because the library is always putting together these fun collections to show us something new and fresh. So let's go down to that navigation bar. And I just want to reiterate that at the library, you browse for books. You don't know exactly what you're looking for. You're seeing everything that the library has to offer. And if something catches your eye, you might go ahead and borrow it. In the instance that you do know exactly what you're looking for, maybe you have a certain title or an author in mind, that's when you're going to tap on this search icon instead. It's that very first icon that you see there in the navigation bar. And this is where you're going to be able to type in a specific author, a specific title. You could even do a series name if you'd like as well. So I'm going to go ahead and look for the book Still Life. I've typed in my title here. And again, I'm just going to skip over my search suggestions and I'm going to tap on search on my device's keyboard. And then usually the book that you're looking for will pop up right up at the top. So you can see here, Still Life by Louise Penny is displaying right here at the top. Now, this is what your search results are going to look like, or if you're browsing a list, this is going to be what it looks like as well. And there's a couple things that I want to point out here for you as we're looking at this page. The first is going to be how you can visually tell the difference between a book that's in the ebook format and a book that's in the audiobook format. So libraries do purchase those formats separately, and that means you can't borrow an audiobook and then switch it on over into an ebook. You have to borrow it in the format that you prefer to read or listen to it in. So if you're looking for an audiobook that you listen to, you will look for a square jacket cover. And then right underneath the jacket cover, you'll also see a set of headphones and the duration of the audiobook. So those will be 3 visual indicators that you can use to know that that is going to be a book that you listen to. If you're interested in reading the book instead, you're going to be on the lookout for a rectangular jacket cover. So it quite literally looks like a book. Most often books are rectangular shaped. And so that is going to be a book that you will read instead of listen to. Now, in addition to telling you how to tell the difference between an ebook versus an audiobook, I also want to point out the difference between books that are available to borrow right away and books that you'll have to join a waiting list for. So the audiobook version of Still Life, you'll see right next to it, it says place hold. And that means there's currently someone reading or listening to every copy that the library owns. And so to join the waiting list, all you have to do is tap on that place hold button there. And that will take you to the confirmation page. And down at the bottom of the page, you'll even get to see approximately how long that title is going to take to get to you before it's your turn. And then you can confirm that you want to place that hold by tapping this big maroon button. And Libby will let you know you've placed the hold on the book. Then she's going to give you a few options for what to do next. And generally when I'm placing holds, that means I haven't found the book that I wanted to borrow yet. So I typically tap on keep browsing because I still need to find a book to borrow. And you'll see that just takes us right on back to the last page that we were on when we were looking for a book. So we can see that now that audiobook version is on my hold shelf. Now, when you are able to borrow a book, because it's available right now, you'll see borrow next to that jacket cover. And we could tap on borrow here. If you knew this is a book I was looking for, I already know I want to borrow it, you can go ahead and tap borrow here. If maybe a friend recommended this book and you're just not sure yet, you don't know what the book is about, you can tap on the jacket cover itself, and that will take you to the details page. So you'll get to read its description first. And if we decide that friend did recommend a pretty decent sounding book, we can go ahead and tap on borrow from this screen instead. So that's what I'll do with you here. I'll tap on borrow. And that's going to take us to the borrowing confirmation page. Now up at the top, you'll notice that we're borrowing Still Life for 21 days. 21 days is the default lending period at your library, and titles return automatically on their due date. So after 21 days, Libby's going to take that book right on back to your library. You don't have to worry about going and manually doing that or worry about late fees either. So now that we're ready, we're going to go down to the bottom. That big maroon button this time says borrow. So we're going to confirm that we want to borrow that book by tapping it. And now Libby is going to start downloading the title for offline use. Libby does this automatically when you're on Wi-Fi. And as soon as you get that little library card with the check mark right next to it, that means the book is downloaded for offline use. You could go up in an airplane on airplane mode. You could go out into the middle of the woods without any cell phone service, and you will be able to open up your book and enjoy it offline. All right, so let's go ahead now and we're going to open this book. But first, Libby's going to say, do you want to read the book directly in the Libby app, or do you want to send it over to a Kindle device? If you have a Kindle, like a Paperwhite or another Kindle e-ink reader, then you are more than welcome to tap on Kindle here. This is going to prompt you to sign into your Amazon account. And once you sign into your Amazon account, you can deliver the book to your Kindle so that you can read it on your Kindle device instead. I don't walk through this process step by step here with you live because it requires me to sign into my Amazon account. But in the PDF that you'll receive in the email, you'll have a 30-second video where you can watch those steps and follow along there. So you do have the option to watch it if the Kindle steps are of interest to you. For this live presentation, I'm going to go ahead and open it directly in the Libby app, and we'll talk about a few of Libby's key reading features. So when you first open a book, you'll have menus up at the top and the bottom of the screen. Now, Libby's counting the pages here, but as soon as she's done, we'll see our page number here on the left, and then the total number of pages on the right. When we want to start reading, all we have to do is tap on the center of the screen here, and that's going to drop our menus away. And then we can start tapping or swiping on the right side of the screen if we want to page forward. The left side of the screen will take you backwards. The right side will take you forwards. Now, one of the best things about reading digitally, I think, is the fact that you can customize your reading experience to meet your own individual needs. So we're not locked into the size of the font or anything like that. So I want to show you how you can adjust your reading settings for your own personal benefit here. So what I'm going to do is tap in the center of the screen. That brings up our menus. And then up in the top right-hand corner here, you'll see this A icon. That A stands for appearance. So I am going to tap on that A icon to bring up the appearance menu. There are 3 things that you can change within your reading appearance. The first is text scale. So you can use this slider here to increase or decrease your font size. Next, we have lighting. I'm currently in bright mode. That is Libby's default, but we have a sepia mode as well as this dark mode available for you if you want something that's a little easier on your eyes at night. And then last but not least, we have book design. Now, book design is just Libby's fancy way of saying font style. So these are the different font styles that you can put Libby into. Publisher's default just means this is the book the publisher chose for the print copy. So if you went to the library and picked this book up, it's going to have this exact font. Now, I do want to point out the Open Dyslexic font here, because it might help some users with dyslexia while reading. Now, I am going to actually put these all back to my default here. And the reason I do that before I close this menu is that these settings are sticky. And what I mean by sticky settings is you only have to come in and change these settings 1 time per device. And then Libby's going to remember that for you and deliver books to you with those settings in place. So you're not going to have to keep coming back in here and changing it every time you borrow a book. So really nice feature there. All right, since we're back to my defaults here, I'm just going to drop this menu out of the way by tapping above it. You'll see it just dropped off my screen. And now I want to leave this ebook and pop into an audiobook so we can talk about a few things in the audiobook experience. So to leave an ebook, you're going to tap in the center of the screen. That makes our menus reappear. And then up in the top left-hand corner, you'll see the back button. That back button is going to take you out of both ebooks and audiobooks, and it'll always be up in that top left-hand corner. So I'll tap on back, and Libby has now taken me over to the shelf. And this is where I reorient everyone down in the navigation bar. So let's head down to the bottom of the screen here. First, I'm going to point out this bar on the right side of the screen that says Still Life. This is a now reading bar. So it's the book that you're currently reading. The last book that you had open in the Libby app is going to appear there. And if you tap on it, then you will be able to open your book right back up to the last spot you were at. I'm going to dismiss this for now, just so that we can see the full navigation bar across the bottom of the screen. And let's just review what we've covered already. So first, we went to the library icon. And when you tap on that, you can browse your library's entire collection of ebooks and audiobooks. This is where we had the filters up at the top. We had the guides like the kids and teens guide. And then we also had those general curated collections that change and rotate throughout the year. Then we went over to the search icon, that magnifying glass. And when you tap on that, that's where you can search for something specific, whether it's a title, an author, or a series name. We're now over on the shelf, and that is the 4th icon that you see on the navigation bar. It looks like a little stack of books, and it says shelf underneath. And your shelf is what you're going to tap on when you want to look at all of the books that you currently have loaned out in Libby or you're currently placed on hold. So these are books that you're actively in your lending period. You borrowed them from the library in Libby and you are able to open them and read them. So up at the top of the shelf, you'll see we have filters. If you want to specifically look at your loans or specifically look at your holds, you can certainly do that. On the main page of the shelf, it's going to show you your loans, and they're going to be organized by the last book or last time that you opened them. So that's why the book I just borrowed with you is showing up here at the top. And then as I make my way down my shelf, I can see the other books that I borrowed earlier in the week. And I'm going to go ahead and open up my audiobook here so that we can talk about two important details of the audiobook. So first, your reading progress is going to show up at the top of the screen. I'm 25% of the way through here. We even have some timestamps to show you how far in the book and how much you have left to go over on either far end. And then down at the bottom is where we're going to have the player. So you can see I have that big play button here. When we're ready to begin listening, we can just tap on play and that will start the audio. Now I hear him on my end. You should only be able to hear me instead. But what's really important to know about the audiobook experience as a new user, I always like to warn people that Libby is designed to play audiobooks in the background of your device. Now, what that means is you can tap on play, start that audiobook up, and then you can minimize the Libby app and start online shopping. You could put your screen to sleep and you could start doing the dishes or gardening, and your audiobook is going to continue to play from your device. Now, with that in mind, what I really want to warn people about is when you're finished listening to your audiobook, make sure you come back into Libby and tap on that pause button. That will stop the narrator from talking, and then you don't have to worry about missing and losing your place. I've seen people just turn the volume down. That way they can't hear the narrator anymore, but then you're going to have to go back and find out where was the last place that I was listening to. So make sure you're coming in, you're tapping on pause, and then you can move on with your day and you don't have to worry about losing that spot. Okay, let's go ahead up to the top of the screen. We're going to leave this audiobook now by tapping that back button. Remember that back button is always going to be in that top left-hand corner. That is how we leave our books. And that took me back to my shelf. Let's reorient again down at the bottom of the screen. So I'm going to go down to the bottom. You'll notice that I have a new now reading bar. And that's because it's always the last book that you had open in Libby. Since I opened up my audiobook, that reading bar switched over to the audiobook. I'm going to dismiss it again. So we just talked about the shelf, and that is where our current borrowed books are. So those are the loans that were actively in our lending period and the holds that we're waiting on the wait list for. Right next door, you'll see the clock icon and it says timeline underneath. This is all of your history within the Libby app. So this is everything that you've ever put on hold, everything you've ever loaned out or returned. So I want you to keep that in mind. Shelf is current. You can pull the book off your shelf and begin reading it. Timeline is your history. This is everything you've ever done in the Libby app. We're going to finish off the demonstration for getting started in the menu, which is the very center icon. It's our last icon that we have to talk about today. And so I'm going to tap on the menu here. You can think of the menu as your app settings. That's quite helpful to know as well. And at the top of our menu, you'll see that I have this gray box here. And this gray box is where any of your in-app notifications are going to be. I currently don't have any notifications, so Libby is instead prompting me to manage my notifications. So I'm going to pop into this menu here to show you what that is going to look like. Now, I do just want to point out that Libby's going to bring this manage notification menu to you the very first time you place a hold. So she makes it a little easier on you than what I'm doing right now. But I want to pop in here to show you what that's going to look like when Libby does prompt you to do so. So up at the top, we have all of the ways that you can be notified about important events that happen in the Libby app. By default, Libby is going to be set to this blue notification line. Everything will be that blue notification. Now, the blue notification line is a push notification, and push notifications appear on your device's screen regardless of what app you have open. That means you could be looking at Libby, but it also means you could be browsing the news or reading Facebook or, anything like that. Now, it will show up like a text message would on your device. So it shows up no matter what. You can switch this over to a menu badge if you'd like, but a menu badge is an in-app notification. That means you have to open up Libby to see it. It's not going to appear when you're browsing Facebook or reading the news. You will have to open up Libby to see it. And I just showed you where that was when we first started talking about notifications. It was the gray box that was up at the top of the menu. Of course, if it's something that you don't need to be notified about, you can set it to ignore if you'd like. Now, underneath all of the ways that you can be notified are all of the things that you can be notified about. And I just want to talk about the hold ready notification and recommend that you keep your hold ready notification set to that blue push notification option. The reason I recommend that is because when it's your turn on a waiting list, Libby will give you a 3-day period where that book is sitting in limbo and you are the only person who will be able to take action on it. The 3 actions that you can take in that 3-day limbo period are to borrow the hold, to cancel the hold, or to have the hold delivered later. Delivered later is a great option if you get busy and you know you're not going to have time to read the book during your lending period. You can stay at the top of the wait list and just give Libby a date to deliver the title to you again. Now, if you don't either borrow, cancel, or deliver the title later, Libby will automatically deliver the title later one time as a courtesy, and you'll get a second 3-day limbo period. In the second 3-day limbo period, if you don't take action again, that's when Libby will cancel your hold. So that means you have to go and rejoin the wait list, which puts you at the bottom. And take it from me, it is a day ruiner if you waited 5 weeks for a book that you're really excited about, and then you miss those limbo periods where you can take action, and then you have to wait another 5 weeks. It really makes me sad. So I just want to make sure that none of that is happening to you. Make sure that you're getting those notifications no matter what. Okay, we're going to come back up to the top here, and I'm going to tap on back. And you'll notice underneath my notification section, you'll see my libraries listed. So I have that Jericho library card that I just did at the very beginning of our presentation. And then I also have 2 of my demo libraries as well. You can add as many library cards to Libby as you'd like. These can be from the same library if you have multiple people in your family who want to share a single device. Or like me, they can be from different libraries, and that will require you to have an active library card from each of the libraries, and they have to use Overdrive services and use Libby. But the benefit of adding multiple library cards is each library has control of what they buy for their own patrons. So in Cleveland, we have a city library, a county library, and a state library that we can access all just in the same, by having the same address. And so we can determine what library we want to borrow from if they have the shortest waiting list, or maybe one library never even bought the 4th book of the series, but our other two libraries did. So that is a nice benefit as well, adding those additional library cards if you have those. Now, down at the bottom here, we see help and support. I just want to talk about two things under this section before we get into our next steps. The first is going to be this settings menu. So I'm going to tap on settings, and then I'm going to scroll down until I find custom navigation. You'll see customized navigation here. And at the bottom of your customized navigation screen, I want to point out the labeled icons setting. You'll notice I have this toggled on, and that is why I can see the labels underneath all of my icons within my navigation bar. By default, Libby has these toggled off, and it can be a little hard as a new user to remember where you need to go. So I really like to just hop in here and recommend that you toggle on those labeled icons so that you have a little help when you're navigating. And again, just like that Kindle video, I have a 30-second video. If you just wanted to watch that section, you can come in and on that PDF, watch that 30-second video, save a little bit of time, and turn on your labeled icons right away. Okay, I'm going to tap on back twice here now that we've talked about our labeled icons, and I'm going to come back down to help and support. We're going to finish off the presentation by talking about how you can get some help directly in the Libby app. So there are two ways to find help and support in Libby. The first I like to say is a self-guided way of finding help. So what this is you're asking Libby, who is a computer, a question, or you're typing in a keyword, and the computer is trying to answer that for you. So let's go through an example of that. Maybe I finish my book before its due date and I want to learn how to return it early because I see that there's a waiting list. What I'm going to do is come in here and type in return. That's the keyword I'm going to use. And Libby is going to try to find articles that have return as a keyword in the article. So you can see there's a couple articles here. Returning books is likely the answer. So I'm going to go ahead and tap on returning books. And here Libby's telling me to return a book manually, go to my shelf and follow these steps. So this is, again, self-guided. I'm asking the Libby computer and Libby's trying to answer that for me. If you have a more complicated question and Libby's not giving you the answers that you're looking for, or maybe you run into some issues in the app and you need some troubleshooting help, you can always come down to Ask Our Support Team. And if you tap on this, you can say you have a problem, a question, or an idea, and real life, living, breathing technical support specialists at Overdrive will email you the answer to your question or any troubleshooting steps that you might need. They're a friendly group of folks, I promise, and they just want to get you back up and reading as quickly as possible. So they are always there for you. If you tap on Ask Our Support Team, you can get those answers you're looking for. All right, Joe, give me a thumbs up if your internet seems to be doing well. Okay, so that wraps up our getting started portion. I'm going to hand things back over to Joe here, and he's going to get us into some next steps.
All right, let me know if things sound okay. If not, I might switch my video back off just in case that helps. It's a little iffy. Okay. Truly don't know why my internet's using up the basics portion. And just a few next things. Remember, you can keep sending through those questions, and you can even do so anonymously. We'll continue to answer those as we go through. Now we are going to head into a 5-minute break where we will give you a chance to stretch or download the app, or you can test your knowledge with some mini quiz questions with us. So I'll give you until, we'll just round up a little bit, come back at 10:55 and we'll head into our deep dive session. Now, we only recommend sticking around for the deep dive if you're feeling confident and ready to learn more. So use this quiz as an opportunity to test what you took in. And if after we wrap up, you're at your max capacity, remember, we're going to email out that recording tomorrow morning. So there's no pressure to stick around for the whole thing because you'll be able to cover whatever you missed as early as tomorrow. So just keep that in mind. All right, let's go into some questions here. So remember, this is the point now, and I'm just going to flip off my video because Marissa sent me a message. Audio is a little unstable here. Let's see if that helps out. All right. So these questions are going to appear automatically on your screen. Just give them your best answer. If you're unsure, feel free to choose that option. And yeah, let's have some fun and test what you learned. And remember, just be back if you're walking away at 10:55. Okay, question 1. In the navigation bar, what do you tap to browse your library's collection? Menu, the stack of books, or the clock? So we're looking for our next great read, but we don't know exactly what we want yet. We're going to browse around. And I'll close this in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. All right, excellent work, everyone. When we read, we'll tap on that library building in our navigation bar. We have those filters up at the top to help us narrow down our search. We can hop into one of our library's guides, or we could dive into any of those pre-made curated collections. And it sounds like there's still some audio issues on my end. I got another message from Marissa. Marissa, do you want to take over?
Yeah, let's do that. You, again, we could get the gist of it, but you were like slowing down and then speeding up. And I just want to make sure that we're reiterating all of this information that we learned in our first section. So I want to make sure that everyone can hear clearly. So if you still want to do the,
Sorry, folks.
Yeah, be my Vanna White, control things, and I will talk through them. Okay, so let's move on to question number 2 here. So in the navigation bar, what do you tap when you want to find your current loans and holds? So is it the same answers here? Magnifying glass, library, menu, the stack of books, and clock. So if you remember from our getting started session, I said this is when you're actively in your lending period. You can pull those books right off and begin reading them because you have them loaned out. All right, and we will end this one here in 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. And everyone got it correct. This is great. Good job. So when you want to find your current loans and your current holds, you're going to tap on your shelf. That's that little stack of books. And from there, remember, we have those filters up at the top. And then the main page is going to be all of your loans organized by the last time you open them. Very rarely do we get 100% accuracy on that question. So very, very good job. Let's go over to question number 3 now. And this is going to be all about your reading appearance menu. So what are the 3 ways that you can customize your eBook's appearance? Is it the text scale, so the size of the font, the lighting, that background color of the page, and book design, the font of the book, or language, the language that the book is written in? You'll remember I said this is one of the favorite things that I think, one of the best things about reading digitally. We hopped into our appearance menu and we changed around the way that that book looks. And we're going to go ahead and close this in 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. And you are continuing to make me so proud. This is the hardest question on the quiz. Everyone, usually we have one person that we tricked, but everyone got this right. So let's go through this video. When you want to change your reading appearance, you're going to go to the A icon. And Joe, I don't know if you press play, but it's frozen on my screen. Got those internet connection issues. There we go.
Oh no, it was playing on my side. Hold on.
We have the text scale, so that's that slider where you can increase and decrease the text size. We have the lighting, which is that background color. So we have bright mode, sepia, and dark mode. And then at the bottom, we have book design. And you'll remember I said that's Libby's fancy way of saying font. So you have those different font styles that you can put Libby into. Now, nobody guessed language. That was our trick answer. But I do want to point out that you can borrow books that are written in other languages, but it's not something that you can change within your appearance menu because it requires a translator. So any books that are written in other languages, a professional translator is translating that from English into another language. And so in our tips and tricks, I will show you a couple of different ways that you can look for other books in languages, but that's not something that you can just change in your settings of a book. So again, really proud of everyone for getting that question correct. And that actually wraps up our quiz here. So we're gonna end our getting started session here. This is the last call that Joe promised. So if you went through the getting started session and you're like, that was a lot of information, I don't know if I can really learn anything more and it'll be beneficial, it might overwhelm you, then you're more than welcome to call it quits here. And then you have the recording that you'll get in the email tomorrow that you can see the second session once you get used to the basics. There's no shame in knowing your limits as far as learning something new. If you want to take a break here and watch that recording later, you're more than welcome to do that. But if you want to stay, we're going to talk about a few of our good tips and tricks for getting the most out of Libby. Like Joe said, this is the cherry on top of the sundae here. So just a few quick reminders before we get started. We do have closed captions available, and you can turn those on using Zoom's meeting controls. It looks like a little box that says CC, live transcript. You're more than welcome to use those. If they get in your way at any point and it's blocking what I'm doing, you can just tap or click on them and drag them across the screen to get them out of your way. You can also continue to ask questions if you'd like. Joe will be answering all of those questions in the Q&A. Sometimes he might mark it to be answered live. So you'll see it'll say it'll have a little microphone and say this question is going to be answered live. That means we're saving it till the end of our session and we will go over it on the iPad. I'll show you the steps. You'll get to see it right there in front of your eyes instead of just getting a text answer. So just keep that in mind as well. We love questions, and you can ask questions anonymously too. So if you see a button I don't push and you want to know about it, go ahead and ask a question about it. We'd be happy to share that information with you. So we're going to talk about 4 tips and tricks today. And that's going to be customizing your browsing experience. I'm sure Joe has changed the slide and is just taking a second. And actually, Joe, this looks like the wrong slide here. So instead of magazines, we're going to be talking about customizing your browsing experience. And then the last 3 here will be the same. Filtering and refining lists so that you can find the books that you like faster. Tags, this is how you can organize books in Libby. We'll talk about how to create tags, why they're so great, how that tags are different from the Overdrive app. And then we'll finish off with talking about how to make notes and highlights, which is really great for anyone in book club or anyone who might be a student, or you maybe just like to annotate your books for fun. I'm that way as well. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen for you here, and we'll get started. Give me just a second. So our first tip, like I said, is going to be all about customizing our browsing experience. And so to do that, you'll notice I'm on the library page. That's where we do all of our browsing. And for this tip, I'm going to hop into one of our filters. So we talked about all of these filters in our getting started session. I'm going to tap into available now. And you'll remember this is a list of all of the books that currently don't have a waiting list in my demo library. So, how to customize your browsing experience. You'll notice that about a third of the way down the page here, we have this dark blue line. And on the left side, it says preferences. If you tap on preferences, you will be able to set some filters that are saved and applied to all lists in Libby. And what that means by saved and applied to all lists is once you set your preference, you can open and close Libby a million times and you'll still have those filters saved to your Libby app. So if you are someone who only speaks one language, then you might not want to come across books that are written in other languages while you're searching for books, right? Or browsing for books, because you're not going to be able to read them. And this holds true for me, much to my high school French teacher's dismay. I retained very little of the French that she taught me. And so I only speak English. So on my device, I have a preference that is an English preference. That way, when I look for a book, I'm only seeing books that are written in English. I don't have to skip over any books that are written in French or Spanish or Russian. I know that any book that I see when I'm searching and browsing is going to be in the language that I speak. Now, there's some other options here as well, and there's 2 that I'll cover here in this tip. The first will be format. So when I'm working on the digital bookmobile, it is quite common for someone to come up on and say, I can't read ebooks because it hurts my eyes. You know, my eyes have been getting worse lately, and I'm really only interested in audiobooks. I only want to listen. And in those instances, setting an audiobook preference makes it so that when you're looking for a book, you're only seeing books that are in the audio format. You don't have to skip past any of those ebooks. Of course, that works if you are interested in only reading. I've met plenty of people who say, narrators' voices annoy me. I want to make up the voices on my own, in my own head. I want to read the book. I don't want to listen to it. And if that's the case for you, you can set a book preference instead. That way you're not coming across audiobooks when you're browsing and searching. Now, I like all the formats, so I'm going to keep it at any, but then I'm going to cover audience. That's the last one that I'll go over here with you. Right now, when I'm looking for a book, I see juvenile, YA, general, and mature content. I point this one out for anyone who might have kids or grandkids or any kid in their life that has their own device and they want to use Libby. If you want to make sure they're only seeing age-appropriate content, you can set a juvenile preference or a YA preference, and that way there's no chance they're going to see 50 Shades of Grey come up when they're looking for a book. They'll only see books that are age appropriate. So those are 3 of the most common preferences that you can apply. And Bruce, I'll answer you right now. This is a really good question. Can you pick multiple preferences for a single category? You cannot. But if that is something that you're interested in, then I would suggest putting that as an idea where I showed you in the help and support. I'll go over that again at the end because that's a great idea. And eventually, I do believe that our developers would like to add that as a feature. The more people who ask for a feature, the higher on the priority list it goes. So I'll show you how to do that again. But that kind of segues into our second tip as well. So I'm going to come down to apply preferences. Make sure you hit apply preferences. That way Libby knows that you want to save that preference. And you'll know that preference is saved because you'll have a number next to that preferences button. So number 1, that's because I have my English preference. And now I know it doesn't matter how many times I open and close Libby, I will only see English titles show up when I'm searching. So now let's move on to tip number 2. And I'm actually going to take a sip of water here. And I have a little cough. I have a cough coming on. So let me mute for a second. All right, thank you. I apologize. Usually I have Joe saying half of the things that I'm saying today. And so my voice is starting to feel it. Okay, so tip number 2 is all about filtering and refining searches so that you can find the books that you like faster. And for this tip, I usually give a little prompt to show you how quickly we can really narrow this search down. So let's say my mom and I are going to go on a road trip and we need an audiobook to listen to on our way. My mom likes mystery historical fiction titles, so we're going to filter by subject. We need an audiobook because we don't have a Tesla, so we can't read and drive at the same time. We need to listen so that we can maintain focus. And then last but not least, I want something that's a new release. She's a big reader, so she reads so quickly, and I know I want it to be newer so that there's a chance that she hasn't listened to it yet. So those are the 3 criteria I'm going to use to start narrowing this search down. Audiobook, mystery historical fiction, and new release. You'll see that in our available titles, I'm starting this out with 34,000 books and 22,000 audiobooks. So I could be here all day long looking for this book in a list this big. So to start narrowing this list down, you'll notice there's a refine button that's directly across from preferences. And refining does have the same categories that we saw in preferences. The difference is preferences are saved and applied to all lists moving forward. Remember, no matter how many times we open and close Libby, it's going to be saved. Refining is temporary. That's for the search that you're making at that very moment. And then the next time you look for a book, Libby's going to revert back to the defaults of all of these filters. So the first filter we're going to apply is format. We need an audiobook to listen to. So I'm going to select audiobook. And now our list has narrowed down to 22,000. I'm going to come back to refine. And now I'm going to choose the subject. So you'll see subject is our second option here. And my mom likes mystery, historical fiction. So I'm going to come down to mystery. We've dropped down to 2,800. But my mom doesn't just like mystery. She likes mystery, historical fiction. So I'm going to come back to refine again. And Bruce, here's one of the places you can add multiple filters. So I have mystery selected. I'm going to scroll down just a little bit and tap historical fiction. And we've dropped down to 219. Now, what I want to point out here is that this list is not showing me mystery titles and historical fiction titles. This list is showing me mystery titles that are also historical fiction titles. They're both at the same time. And you can add about 2 to 4, I would say, is the sweet spot for subject or genre refining. Once you get past that, Libby's going to be like, there's not a book in the world that exists that is, horror and comedy and historical fiction and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. The more you put on there, the smaller your search results are going to be. So between 2 and 4 generally gets you where you're going. And you can find those niche subjects if you're interested. I'm going to come back to refine here. And the last thing I'm going to sort by, or the last thing I'm going to apply is my, my sort by release date filter. So I'm going to come down to sort by, and instead of popularity, I will choose release date. And that's going to make it so that the newest titles show up at the top of the list. And then as we make our way down this list, they'll get older and older. And so we started out our tip with over 50,000 titles. Again, I would have been here all day looking for a book. And just by refining with a few filters there, we've narrowed this list down to 219 audiobooks. So that is how you can filter and refine your searches so that you can find the books that you like faster. We're now going to move on to tip number 3. Tip number 3 is all about tags. Tags are how you can organize books in Libby. And tags are one of my favorite features of Libby. I could truly talk about tags all day long. I will limit myself to 5 minutes, not 15 minutes, 5 minutes for your sake. But what you should know about, there is one of my push notifications appearing on my screen. But tags are a way you can organize Libby, and it's also a more robust system than you'll find in the Overdrive app. So I know we had someone asking about Overdrive earlier, so there's definitely someone in here who's used the Overdrive app before. And you'll know that the Overdrive app gives you a wish list and a history list, but you're limited to those 2 lists. In Libby, we have tags. And tags are really robust in that you can name your tag whatever you'd like, and you can create as many tags as you'd like as well. So some good examples of tags you can create are a wish list or a history list. You could also create a tag to keep track of recipe books that there's a specific recipe you like in it. You can keep track of that list. I use my tags for gifting, helping me during the holidays. So I have a father-in-law who is an avid reader, and books are the only present I've ever figured out to give him that doesn't just sit in a corner. And so I'm constantly challenged with finding history books that he enjoys. And so what I've started doing is when I'm looking for books in Libby and I come across a book that it sounds like he would be interested in, I add it to a tag on my Libby app. And that way, when the holidays roll around, I can be at the bookstore, open up my Libby tag and find those books really quickly. And it saves me a lot of time at the bookstore so I can selfishly go look for my own books. So I use that as an example just to show you that tags are really robust. You can use them in any way that you can think of. So let's go ahead and walk through the tagging process. And then I'll also show you how you can export the tags out of the app if you want to share a tag list with a friend or a book club or something like that. So let's pretend I'm still looking for that book for my mom and I's road trip, and I come across Clark and Division. And this seems really interesting, but maybe not the right fit exactly for the road trip. So I'm going to save it for later. What I'm going to do is come down to tag. It's that third option. And once I tap on tag, I can create a new tag, or I can tap on any of my existing tags that I already have created to add it to one of those lists. Now, regular tags are just used for categorization. There we go. And organization. You create them to keep track of them and organize your books. They don't have any special abilities. Smart tags, however, do have special abilities. Libby is doing something behind the scenes, and it has a little special ability attached to it. The one that's relevant to you is this little red receipt, and this is a borrowed smart tag. And what the borrowed smart tag does is anytime you borrow a book in Libby, Libby will automatically apply the borrowed smart tag to that book and keep a list of all the books that you've borrowed in Libby. I'll show you why this is really nice here in a second. I will also show you how you can delete the borrowed smart tag if you're not interested in having Libby automatically tag your books for you. So just keep in mind, smart tags have special abilities. Regular tags are just for organization's sake. Now I'm going to go ahead and create a new tag here to show you how that works. So I'll tap on new tag, and then we can name our tag. And if you need a description, you can add that as well. I don't find myself doing that often, but occasionally I will. And then I've typed in mystery because I'm a big genre tagger. I am a mood reader. I need to be in a specific mood for a mystery title. So I know when I'm in that mood, I can hop into my mystery tag and find the books that I've already shown interested in that fall under that subject. So let's go with mystery. I know what that means, so I don't need to add a description, but you're more than welcome if you do like to do that. And then we'll tap on done. Now, once you create your tag, Libby is going to display that tag right there next to the jacket cover when you're searching and when you're browsing. This is one of the reasons I love tags so much, because let's say we're scrolling through this list and I come across The Devil in the Dark Water and I see my borrowed smart tag next to it. Well, that borrowed smart tag, if you remember, it attaches itself to any books that you've borrowed and read in Libby. So before this tag was created, I guarantee you, I probably would have listened to the sample. I would have read the first 50 pages if it was an ebook, and it would have been a waste of time because then my memory would have snapped and said, hey, you've read this book before. Now I'm getting that visual indicator. I've borrowed this book before. I can just skip on over it and continue my way down the list. But then let's say I come across They Went Left. Well, that has my to be read tag attached to it. So in the past, I've expressed that I want to read this book eventually. I'm probably just going to go ahead and borrow this book instead of still going through this list of 219 titles. I found it pretty quickly, saved a little bit of time there. So that is how to create tags and then what they look like when they show up in your searching and browsing. Now let's head over to the shelf here, that stack of books. And on the shelf, right next to your loans and your holds, you'll see your tags. So I have 5 tags that are created. I'm going to tap on tags there. And here are all of my lists. So let's go ahead and look at my to be read tag. Now, here are all of the books that I've tagged as to be read. We can keep scrolling and scrolling if we wanted to. And one thing I want to point out over on the right side of the page here, you'll see these 3 icons show up. So the plus sign, that means the book is available to borrow. The calendar means that it is currently on a waiting list. And the double dash there, that means my library owned it at one point, but their license expired, so the library no longer owns it. Now, it doesn't matter which of these icons you tap on. What I want to show you is if you tap on that icon, you will be able to borrow or place a hold directly from that screen. Or down at the bottom, you'll also be able to see all of your libraries attached and which of those libraries have copies available and which ones might have the shortest wait lists as well. So this is a little tip within a tip that I always like to show everyone, that those icons will allow you to compare books across your libraries to see which of your libraries have shortest waiting lists. It really comes in handy there. Okay, so in addition to those nifty icons, you'll also have an actions button up at the top right side of the screen. If you tap actions, you will be able to rename your tag or delete your tag. If you're not interested in that borrowed smart tag, I always like to point that out here. And then in the middle, we also have export tag. This is how you could share your tag list with a friend or print it out. And so let's walk through those steps here for you. I'm going to tap on export tag. And Libby does give a few different file types. Depending on what you want to do with it, you might choose a certain one. For the example, let's go ahead and choose table. And now we're on the data export page. So you can see at the bottom all of my tag books, but up in the top right-hand corner here, you'll see this share icon. This is a universal icon here. It looks the same in every app, pretty much. I don't think I've ever seen it, maybe a paper airplane, but that square box with the arrow pointing up, that is the share icon, and you can send your tag list out in a message. You can even do it via email if you'd like as well, or you can scroll down and tap on print if you wanted to print your tag list out, share it at book club, have a vote on what book that you'd like to read next, things like that. So there's a couple different options that you have with sharing your tag lists. I shamelessly share all of my tags with my sister so that I force her to read all of the books that I read so that I have someone to talk to them, about with them. So that is tip number 3, tagging books. Why tags are great, how you can use tags, and then also how you can export them out of the app. Again, I could keep talking, but I'll finish there and we will dive into our last tip of the day, which is all about making notes and highlights. So I'm going to go ahead and open up from my shelf my copy of Pride and Prejudice. Now, when you want to make a highlight in a book, you can highlight a word, you could highlight a sentence, a full passage, a full paragraph. As long as it's on a single page, you can highlight a big chunk of text if you'd like. So let's go ahead and highlight the first sentence in this top paragraph here. I am going to move my mouse slightly to the left so that you can see as I hold my finger on the word Elizabeth, it turns blue. Now I say hold your finger because if you tap, it's going to turn the page. So make sure as soon as your finger makes contact with the screen, you're keeping your finger on the screen. And then you're dragging your finger across the screen until the full passage that you want turns blue. Then you can lift your finger up off the screen. So you'll see as soon as I lift my finger up, the menu down at the bottom appears and we can make a highlight. So let's say I want to be organized here and choose pink. Now that my highlight is placed, I can add a note to it by tapping on the highlight and typing in the note. So this is a note is what I'm going to type today, but I have done full paragraphs, so you're not limited to just a few words here. And then now that I've made my note, I'm just going to tap below that menu to drop it off the screen. And I'm going to page forward. Okay. So now let's say I want to reference one of the highlights that I've made earlier in the book. What I'm going to do is tap in the center of the screen. And then up in the top right-hand corner, you'll see there's 3 bookmarks in a row, like this little stack of bookmarks here. If you tap on that icon, you'll see all of the bookmarks and then notes and highlights that you make as well. So let's say I want to reference this highlight about Mr. Bingley. I'm going to tap on that and it takes me right back over to the page that that highlight was placed on. So I can see the full passage that I highlighted here. And I also could tap on the highlight and my note will drop down from the top of the screen. So that is how you can reference your notes and highlights if you still have that book on your shelf and you are still able to open it up. Occasionally, you'll find that you borrow a book and you'll make your notes and highlights in it, and then the book has to go to the next person in line, and you can't borrow it again to reference your notes and highlights that way. But don't worry, there's still 2 other ways that we can find those notes and highlights, even if we can't borrow that book again. So what I'm going to do is leave this ebook by tapping in the center of the screen and tapping back. And what we want to do when we want to find the notes and highlights of a book that we've already borrowed and it's returned to the library is to go to the details page. Now, this was at the very beginning of our presentation, so let's refresh on how to do that. I'm going to come down to search. And I'm going to clear my search for still life first. There we go. And type in the book that I'm looking for. So I made notes and highlights in a book called The Guest List. I'm going to search for that book. Now, here's another reason that borrowed smart tag comes in handy. I know that I've borrowed this book, so that's definitely the book that I'm looking for. Now to go to the details page, I'm going to tap on the jacket cover. On the details page, you have a reading journey if you've borrowed the book in the past. I'm going to tap on reading journey here. And this is going to show every action that I've ever taken with this book. Now, up at the top, you'll notice that actions button, and it should look familiar because we talked about it in tags. if we tap on actions, we can export our reading data. So instead of exporting our tags for printing or emailing, we could export our notes and highlights out of the app using the same steps that I showed you in tip number 3. If that's just one step too far and you still want to reference your notes and highlights, then on the same page, you can just scroll down until you see the timeline for the title. And here you can see I have highlights placed in 3 different locations. I just have to tap on that highlight and see the full passage that I highlighted up at the top, and then right below in quotations, the note that I made as well. So if you have book club for a popular title and you can't borrow that book again, don't worry, you'll still be able to see any notes and highlights that you've made in Libby and reference them just by going to that reading journey on the title details page. And that wraps up our last tip of the day. And we're going to get into our Q&A section here. I know we're running a little bit up behind from all of the computer issues, internet issues that we've had. So we're going to stay until all of the questions that you have are answered. So if you have any questions about Libby or Overdrive, then feel free to hop into the Q&A and ask those. I can walk through them live here on the screen. As I wait for questions to come in, I just want to remind everyone how to find help and support. And I hear my headphones beeping because they're dying, so I'm going to turn those off really quick. So let's just talk about how to get help and support again if you need it. So down in the menu, that middle icon of the navigation bar, you can tap on menu, and then you can scroll down underneath help and support. If you tap on get some help, you can first self-guide. So maybe you want to ask the computer how to do something. Let's say you really liked that tag tip, but you forgot everything I said, which is okay. You can tap on the search bar, type in tags, and then tap on search. Again, this is the computer trying to answer your question. So she's going to give out a few different articles here. What are tags is most relevant. So we can tap on what are tags. And here, Libby is giving us the description of tags and where to find them on our shelf. And then if you need more information or you're having trouble with your tags, you can also come down to Ask Our Support Team. Now, Bruce, this is where I was pointing to you earlier about how to add multiple preferences from the same category. So you could come in here and you can say, I have an idea. I want to add multiple preferences, multiple languages as a preference. And if you go ahead and put your idea in and hit next, you'll be added to a list of people who are recommending that. And the higher that number gets for people recommending, the higher it goes on the priority list. So I always recommend, I even as an Overdrive employee hop in here all the time and say, I want to recommend titles for purchase from my library. I want to be able to read and listen at the same time, things like that. I'll always come in and share my ideas with our developers because Libby is at its core an app that is built off of the feedback from Overdrive. So it really is important to us what patrons and users have to say about Libby. Your feedback is always going into our app and improving it. So always share your ideas with us. We love that. Okay, so we have a question from Joyce. And that is Libby only for books? How do you get music? So Yes and no. So Libby has ebooks and audiobooks. And then in Libby, you also have access to Canopy, which is movies. And what Canopy actually does here, let me switch over to your library to show you what that's going to look like, is if you scroll down on your library page, remember this is where we browse, you'll see a section that's labeled extras. And Canopy is a film service. So you could come in and tap on get and open. I'm not going to do this because again, this is one of your library's demo cards, but it will take you to the Canopy website and you'll be able to watch movies. For music streaming, your library likely has a different app or a different way to access any streaming music. Now, Joe and I work for Overdrive. We actually don't work at your library. So we know about Libby specifically, but reach out to your library and you can ask, how do I stream music? And they should have some materials for you that will give you the instructions on how to do that. Or they might offer a class like we're teaching right now on how to access your music streaming services as well. But for your question, Joyce, Libby for you has ebooks, audiobooks, and films. Okay. It doesn't look like we have any more questions coming in. I'll give another minute or so here since we were running a little behind in case anyone does have any questions. Very welcome, Bruce. Thanks for coming today. I hope it was helpful for you. All right, we hit 11:35. I don't see any more questions coming in, so we are going to just go ahead and say thank you for joining us today. We hope that you found today helpful. Remember that we did record this session, and tomorrow you'll get an email from Zoom, and it's going to have the recording for this session. So in that recording, you'll see getting started and you'll see the tips and tricks. And I really recommend if you feel like you kind of got it, but you're not 100% sure, you can go through that recording and pause and play and follow along with your device. I really recommend doing that. That is a nice way to learn how to use the Libby app. And then in addition to the recording, you also have a PDF that you'll receive. The PDF is going to break down our getting started session in all the different things that I taught you today: borrowing, placing holds, customizing your navigation, managing your notifications, how to send a Kindle. I break all of that stuff down and give you links to the help articles. So if you want to read it, you can read it. And then the videos. Those are 30-second videos. So if there was just one thing that you're like, I forget how to do that, but I don't want to try to find it in the recording, you can certainly go and watch that 30-second video and get the answer that you need nice and quick. One small thing about the PDF that I want to mention is that we have recently had an update to what the navigation bar looks like. And our menu you saw today is 3 little lines. And in the PDF, the menu is going to look like Libby's head. So that's the only change. It's quite small. It's in the same exact place. It just looks a little different. It does the same thing. So just keep that in mind as well. All right, so thanks so much for joining us today. We are going to hop off. I hope that you have a lovely day and happy reading.
Happy reading.